In this lecture, we are going to talk about predictors and psychological testing. Organizations use many different types of tests as part of the employment selection process. Some tests are used more frequently than others are, and some may be job-specific. It is important to know which tests one may encounter in applying for jobs. Predictors are used in place of criteria and include data, test results, prior performance, work samples, and any other variable used to forecast a criterion. Now, in case you forgot, criteria are defined as evaluative standards that can be used as yardsticks for measuring an employee's success or failure. Now, let's talk about classification of tests and testing formats. The decision about which test to use depends on a variety of factors. To help with such decisions, tests can be classified not only by subject matter, but according to other characteristics as well. Some of these common types of characteristics are power versus speed, individual versus group, paper and pencil versus performance, objective versus subjective, and language versus non-language. Now, in power versus speed, more tests depends on both speed and power to some extent, but one of the two may be the main focus. In a speed test, a person's score depends on how many items that person can complete in a given time. The items are usually fairly easy. An example might be a test requiring applicants to write a symbol in place of a number. On a power test, all the test takers have enough time to complete all the items, but usually do not because some of the items are so difficult that they cannot be completed. In individual versus group, group tests can be given to many people at the same time. An example is the Wonderlic personnel test. It is obviously cheaper to use this kind of test in terms of both administering and scoring. Let's move on to paper and pencil versus performance. In paper and pencil tests, all the items are printed on a form, and the applicant answers the questions on the test form or on a separate sheet. A written test given to a class in Spanish is an example. The problem with such a test is that the students may know how to write Spanish, but be unable to speak it correctly. Performance tests require the applicant to do a task, often an actual job sample. Moving on to objective versus subjective. Objective tests have only one correct answer for each item and often can be scored by a machine. The multiple choice tests given in many college classes are often objective tests. Subjective tests require a great deal of skill to interpret, and each person doing the scoring may score the test slightly different. Moving on to language versus non-language. The great majority of tests that are used in employment selection involve language in administering the test, taking it, or both. However, if language use is not a relevant feature of the job someone is being selected for, a non-language test may be used. Pictures or demonstrations can be used to give the directions of that test. Now, computerized testing is another. As computers have become part of everyday life, they have become part of the testing process. Computers have been used to administer, score, and even interpret a number of selection tests. Computers often make the testing environment more accessible to disabled applicants, for example. Although they are initially expensive, their growing use has helped reduce their costs. The expense of the hardware and software generally has limited the use of computerized testing to large organizations, such as the military, that do a large amount of testing. Now, let's move on to the types of commonly used tests and predictors. First, we have the mental ability tests. They differentiate between applicants on the basis of their cognitive abilities. Most of the tests used in personal selection are brief screening tests designed to sort applicants into qualified versus unqualified categories based on their test scores. Interest inventories can be helpful in focusing a person's training or education, or directing a person's career development. Next, we have personality tests that assess the personal characteristics of the test taker. Some criticisms include whether these scores are accurate, whether personality factors really relate to job performance, and whether these tests represents an invasion of privacy. For this course, I have provided some more information on personality itself and also some popular tests. I have also included some links to free personality tests that you can take. After taking the test, I want you to assess whether or not you believe your personal characteristics matches up to what the personality test suggests. Now let's move on to aptitude and achievement tests. They assess particular job skills of the test taker after a formal training program. Organizations may select potential applicants, put them through training, then test them for the ability to do the job. Integrity or honesty tests assess the truthfulness or dishonesty of employees and applicants. To replace the polygraph tests, many organizations have switched to paper and pencil integrity tests. And I know most of you guys, when applying for jobs, or if you had in the past few years, there's always a test that you take to assess your integrity and honesty. Let me know whether or not you've taken such a test and what your assessment of these tests are. At the end of the day, we want to know what makes a good psychology test. Now, psychological tests should distinguish successful employees and unsuccessful employees in a specific job or field. Characteristics of good tests include reliability, validity, norms, and standardizations.